Hello friends, Kerrigan Skelly with PinPoint Evangelism here with you today. So I've been preaching on college campuses since about 2004, about 18 years now, maybe 2005, I can't remember exactly the date, but it's quite a while. And I've preached on about 130 different college campuses. And if you watch my channel, you know these things to some degree. And I've had people have interest and getting on college campuses and preaching themselves, which is really a blessing to me. I prayed the Luke 10:2 prayer quite a bit to have people see it. The harvest is white and ready for the reaping, and to go into the highways, the byways, and hedges and compel them to come in. So I want to do what I can to help you get on the college campus and be successful in that. Of course, this is a very practical video. It's not about preparation spiritually, like getting in the Word, understanding apologetics, lots of prayer and fasting, those kind of things. It's about getting onto the campus so you can actually preach. So on all the campuses I've preached at, there's different ways of getting on a college campus. Unfortunately, not all of them are just kind of open where you can just come on anytime you want and begin to preach. But as a general rule, when it comes to preaching on a college campus, you need to be careful where you're going to preach, whether they have a permitting or reservation process or not. You want to make sure you're not preaching out in front of dorm rooms. You're not preaching out in front of classroom buildings. That's disturbing the normal school procedures and normal school functionality. Okay, when they have classrooms, they have people sleeping in their houses. I mean, would you want someone preaching out in front of your house? That's what a dorm room is for a student. And the classrooms, you're going to disrupt the classrooms, the normal activity in the classroom, the teacher teaching, if they can hear you outside preaching the Word of God. So generally speaking, probably about 90% of college campuses I've preached at, maybe even more, you're going to preach near the student union or near the library or someplace where the students eat, okay? And generally speaking, what I do, my normal procedure, is I like to arrive on college campus around 11, somewhere between 11 and 12, closer to 11 though usually. Because typically what happens around 11:30-ish, close to 12, most students have a break. There's no classes scheduled during that time. They'll take a break, they'll go get a bite to eat, which is usually in the student center or the university center or the student union. It's all names that is called depending on the college campus you're going to. And then they have the library, which is another place you're allowed to preach there, usually, even though it's a place people go to get books and study. It's not a classroom per se. And then other places that are like dining halls, but are not the student unit, not the student center. And depending upon the size of the college campus, there may be many places all around the campus to eat. And so there may be many opportunities to preach different places. So those are the locations you want to preach in. I would encourage you, just like any place you preach, to look for a place that has good acoustics so it can carry your voice, because most college campuses will not allow you to use amplification when you're preaching. You have to preach from your diaphragm and project your voice. And look for shade. And also look for a place for people to gather in front of you. You want to preach to the location where you want people to gather. Okay? And so when it comes to actually, campuses aren't always completely open. Like I said earlier, you can't just walk on a campus most times these days, unfortunately, and just start preaching. But there still are a lot that are like that. So usually a reservation process or a permitting process. Some college campuses will even have a free speech area, which is ridiculous. It shouldn't be that way. Especially some of the ones I've been dealing with lately since I moved to Georgia. There's several that have free speech areas that are not good areas at all, out in the middle of nowhere. There's barely anyone to speak to. There's vehicle traffic driving by, lots of noise. And if you've watched my last video preaching in Auburn, I've had some issues here recently. So when it comes to college campuses having a reservation or a permitting process, I don't have a problem working with them about those things. You may have a difference of opinion on that. It's up to you. You do as the Lord leads you. But I don't mind working with it. I don't mind, cooperating with them, as long as they're not hindering me from speaking to the students. And so most college campuses that I've been to have good free speech areas. They have good reservation policies where you can request it a couple days ahead of time, as long as you're planning out your schedule when you're going to preach. They respond to it pretty quickly, and if the area is not already reserved by somebody else, you got it reserved. You tell them what time you want to reserve it on, what days you want to reserve it. Typically, I reserve college campuses 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. And I try to, Lord willing, I try to plan out my whole semester ahead of time. So like if I'm going to be the spring semester, which starts early January, mid-January, I'll start planning out in December. Start sending out my reservation request in December. If I'm going to go to the fall semester, which starts sometime in August usually, I'll start planning it sometime in the summer, July. So that's how I go about reserving. Now the question becomes, how do you know which college campuses have reservations, permits, so on, whatever name they want to give it, and which ones actually let you walk on and preach whatever you want, whenever you want? And there's a couple ways to go about that. A few ways to go about that. Number one, you can ask around the people who have been to your college campus and preached, whether it's someone like me or somebody else. Fortunately, a lot of college, the big name college campus preachers, I would not recommend to anybody. But the fact is, there's people who've been to, especially the bigger college campuses. Chances are, someone's been there before, and you can ask them questions. You can see what they went through, what their experience was. Okay, so that's one way you can do it. Another way you can do it is you can call. Usually call the dean of students or some kind of reservation department. If you start out with the dean of students, or start out with the local operator who's answering the switchboard at the college campus, and tell them what you're looking for. You're looking to engage in freedom of religion and freedom of speech on their college campus. You're not a student. And you want to talk to someone about reserving an area, or see if you have to or not, and go through it like that. That's another way you can go. The second way you can go through it, find out this information. The third way, and this is the way I typically do it, is I just show up. I show up to a college campus. I go to an area that I think is not going to disturb the normal classroom procedures. It's not going to disturb dorm rooms. Usually in front of the student center, and I begin to preach. And we see what happens. I hope and pray they just leave us alone. If they approach me and begin to talk about things, I'll reason with them based upon constitutionality and my freedom to speak on their campus. Hopefully they wouldn't try to kick me off or tell me I can't be there, although that has happened before. One example I'll give you is at Valdosta State University recently. Me and Brother Adam were decided to preach there, and it was a 4-hour drive from where I live. And so I went there to preach, and we preached in front of the student center. In fact, I did have a little bit of contact with somebody who commented on one of my videos before the pandemic hit. I believe it was back in 2019 or early 2020. He told me that he's preached there before and had no problems. So I did have a little snippet of information before I went on there. But I sat in front of the student center, began to preach, and then eventually the vice president of student affairs asked if I had a reservation. I'm not trying to make fun of it. We just have a running joke in our fellowship about that. But anyway, I didn't have a reservation. Told him I didn't need one, and I thought the area I was in was fine. He explained to me they had a free speech area, and I'm always hesitant to even submit to that, because if it's not in front of the student center, where is it? Where are you sending me? After a while, I decided to go check it out, with the condition that if I didn't like it, I was going to go right back to the same spot, even though he didn't like that. And I went and checked it out, and it was actually a good spot. There was another eating area right nearby, and so it was like a little stage, maybe lift that foot off the ground. Ironically, it was attached to a dorm room, which I thought was crazy. Didn't think it was smart on their part, but it is what it is. And so that's typically what I do. I'll just show up and I'll preach. And oftentimes, my experience, like if I'm just passing through, even if they have a reservation procedure, like Valdosta State did that first day I went there, they didn't make me fill out a reservation or get permission. There was no one using the free speech area, and so they let me use it. and there was no problems. Another campus on that same trip was Florida State University, huge campus. I know there's been lots of preachers through there. I just showed up, found a good spot I thought was good, and began to preach and didn't have any problems. No one from the administration ever even approached me. So that's typically what I do. I show up, find a good spot, I preach, I respond to them. And like I said, if they have a reasonable free speech area, they have a reasonable reservation process, I'll submit to it. I'm not trying to cause problems for them. I'm not trying to cause problems for myself. I'm simply just trying to preach the Word of God and not have my freedoms taken away, hindering me from doing that. And so this is typically how I work through that. Of course, now the college campus must be a public campus. If you go to a private campus on their property, they can kick you off and have every right to. I've preached near many private campuses. One that I preached at in Kentucky quite a bit was called Campbellsville University, a small Baptist university. And, I preached on a sidewalk, public sidewalk that was in between. It's a sidewalk that separated, it was a road, another sidewalk, and it separated the main part of the campus from where they eat. So it was a perfect spot. Show up the same time I used to show up on any other college campus. Crowds would usually draw, and we'd have a meeting for about 3 to 4 or 5 hours. So you got to make sure it's public. If it's not public, maybe find a public sidewalk nearby. So this is how you go about getting on a college campus. You get to know your rights, and of course, if they're telling you can't be there, or telling you can't speak certain things, or they have no reservation process, or that you have to have someone who's a part of their campus community, like a student group, sponsor you for you to be there at all. Those are all unconstitutional. Those are all illegal. You have to go the legal route to deal with that. And some people decide that they're just going to do it anyway, and they get arrested, and they deal with it like that. My lawyers at Alliance Defending Freedom, they represented me in 3 different lawsuits. We won every single one. And they've always told me not to get arrested, because if you get arrested, then you have to deal with the legal criminal process first to get it dismissed before you can bring a civil lawsuit and force their hand to allow you to have your rights. Of course, even in the case of that, if you wanted to fight it that way, you can always preach to some kind of public sidewalk nearby that's busy that can still help you to reach the students on that college campus. So anyway, hopefully this video is helpful for you, those who are interested in getting on a college campus. If you have any other questions, just drop them down in the comments section, and I'll try to address them. I don't always get around to answering comments, but I'll do my best. And if there's a lot more questions, something that I haven't addressed, I'll just do another video. All right, well, hopefully this was helpful to you. God bless you.